What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering, and no fancy editing for this one. Um, I gotta admit, I'm a little nervous putting this out there. I'm not sure if YouTube will retaliate. I sincerely hope they won't. YouTube has been a great opportunity to me and for me, but this is bigger than just me. This is something that affects many creators. And the reality of monetization on YouTube is it's always an extraordinarily hot button issue. It's something that delivers most of the stress to creators because we just don't know. We don't know what the rules are. As a creator that generally tries to avoid saying things, or sometimes there are topics that, I might just feel like avoiding because I just know that it's going to be a fruitless endeavor. I mean, we talk about this with everything going on with, Johnny out in LA. You just can't cover it. Your videos will get suppressed. You won't make any earnings on it. And in general, it's just a disincentive for content. January of this year rolled out new COPPA program, and many of us didn't really know how that was going to affect earnings. I can now report that January was a more than 50% drop for me, almost 60%. But February it has recovered. So I don't think COPPA has affected me directly, or if it has, it hasn't been as bad. However, tens of thousands of creators absolutely have been affected by that. There's absolutely been content that has been inadvertently put out to be or qualified as, children's content. There are content creators here that I watch that now have to put disclaimers in front of their videos in hopes that whoever's spot checking it will realize that their video is not intended for kids. And the rules around what actually identifies as content for youth is difficult to understand as a creator. It's difficult to follow. But I've been talking with someone that does these video reviews for YouTube, and they've shared some interesting data with me. Now, it's directly, how do I say it? It's directly from what appears to be the agency that reviews videos for monetization. People that this person claims that they were one of the people that helped train the algorithm, helped train it for YouTube's new policy violations. They've said that they've worked on even my videos in particular. He has all the criteria. They have all the criteria for auto monetization, recommendations, and monetization appeals. They did not send me that yet. And if they do, that feels like something that I would probably, I don't know if I could ever even leak that. So I hope they don't send it, because it will create a major issue, moral dilemma for me. Perhaps it would be something that I would ask YouTube about privately if I could even cover it. I don't know. If I was some mega big corporation with, lawyers and all this kind of stuff, maybe you run it and you say, well, I can defend myself. Well, who can defend themselves against YouTube? Now, since the settlement, the FTC settlement, content has been treated completely differently, according to the source, from all other videos. They attached criteria used to determine the monetization appeals on children's content and how to train the algorithm to identify which videos to demonetize. Hit enough triggers and your video will be deleted outright. Now, the thing with these guidelines, which I will share, why aren't you just telling creators? I think you need to give creators the information to know what we can cover, what we can't cover, so at least we're not surprised when something goes awry. But that said, I understand why they can't just say, well, you can't say this word, because then everyone will just say a similar word. And it becomes like this endless loop, right? Where you tell us things we can't say. Right now, I'm just guessing, right? That's why I say the bad guys from WW2, or I say phobe, or I say ist, because I just don't know. I don't have a list. I don't know what's, exactly what. They also sent some other information, which is 100 and, I don't know, so pages of information about Google Updates Search Quality Evaluator. Updates add guidelines on content expertise and interstitial pages while lumping EAT in with page quality. But this is all public information. It's 168 pages of how Google looks at content and whether or not they think that content is trustworthy. Now, does a lot of this transfer over to YouTube? Sure, of course it does. And since this is public, I'll just link it in the description so you can edify yourself, right? You can understand how Google looks at particular trust factors. And I think there's a lot you could apply here into how you title your videos and how you do thumbnails and all sorts of stuff like that. But the particularly interesting information actually came out of just some casual conversations I had about how content is reviewed. So since I've been told, since the COPPA settlement, YouTube has implemented a new system for reviewing children's content. The first step of the analysis is to determine whether the video is intentionally targeting children. Of course, that's a good thing, something I would agree with. There's a few criteria the algorithm uses to evaluate whether a video is intentionally targeting. The main ones are characters from children's media, early learning, and narrated by or featuring young children. Now, this is something, according to COPPA, that content creators have to self-select and say, this is something that we're doing. And if you don't, there are very real penalties to that. Now, once the algorithm has determined that, yes, this is a children's video, it will apply an attribute indicating such. So then it will essentially tag or flag your video as a made for kids, which, again, this is not surprising to me, but it's interesting hearing it confirmed. Now, the next step, and this is where it gets interesting, is whether or not children's video can be monetized. This is where an attribute that they call Junky comes in. That's even at this point, I don't know if, I've done some due diligence here. I feel reasonably confident this information is good, but I've always felt that term was a little bizarre. But according to them, that's what this is. Now, there was other types of videos. Basically, it determines whether or not a video is junky. Then the final thing an algorithm looks at in children's content is something called educational value. This is broader than words indicate and basically means anything showing originality, creativity, or promotes positive messages and behaviors. Educational value is measured on a scale and controls the recommendations of children's content. Now, there's a lot of information around, of course, how they actually review content, and some of this doesn't exactly blow my mind yet, but let's look at what makes a video junky. There are a set of rules that determine whether or not a video is good. And again, a lot of this seems like it's just pulled directly from YouTube's terms of service, right? In this task, you'll be given a list of videos to evaluate. Your job is to spot check the video content, titles, thumbnails, and determine whether or not a video is considered junky for young children. Junky is only applicable to content intended for young children and can be described as one or the more of the following attributes. 1. Spam. 2. Shocking or grotesque. 3. Strange use of children's characters. Now, this is an interesting one, right? Any video that misappropriates popular family characters in content in strange or confusing or objectionable ways. Includes animated or live action costumes. This seems like the whole Spider-Man versus Elsa stuff, right? Unsafe or unhealthy. Promotes dangerous acts, bad behavior, unhealthy habits, such as putting your children or family in harmful situations, emotional distress, making a destructive mess, or binging on junk foods excessively or dangerously. I wonder what this means for the mukbang community. Once the video has been decided that it's for a child, videos then have certain things that happen, right? Videos with an intended audience of young children highlight children's characters, themes, toys, games, keywords, or feature child protagonists. In contrast, many of the videos are of interest to young children, but aren't primarily intended for them. For example, a Taylor Swift music video may be interesting to children, but they're not the primary intended audience. Young children can be intended audience for videos that are inappropriate for them. So that, I guess that's understanding. Then if the content is intended for young children, you'll make two decisions. One, is it junky? Yes, no, I don't know. Two, if yes, what junky attributes does the video contain? So this seems like a checklist for outsourced employees. What do we know about the outsourced employees? Well, it's a mess. The idea that, and again, the idea that Google would be able to do any reasonable amount of review, manual review or otherwise, of the millions of videos that go up on their platform is a task that would probably take tens of thousands of people. And virtually none of it is actually done by YouTube employees. YouTube has outsourced the work to several staffing agencies remote agents. Appen and Lionbridge are the two big ones. In order to be hired to evaluate YouTube videos, you must pass the Google search engine evaluation exam. That's good, right? Once you pass that exam, you are eligible to work for YouTube evaluation tasks. Depending on the company, you may make between $11 and $14 an hour and are allowed to work a maximum of 20 hours a week. That's interesting. Maybe the work is particularly stressful. I'm not sure. Like the previously discussed thing, each task has instructions. The children's content instructions are in fact the most detailed. Descriptions for evaluation criteria are typically a few phrases or sentences with the video. The problem is with each task is a recommended time set by YouTube, which represents the maximum time they are willing to pay for a task. For instance, a demonetization appeal is 5-minute task. They have experimented with 4 or different time sets. That is 5 minutes no matter how long the video is, and that includes any time spent reading instructions or watching example videos. This is the reason that it's so difficult to predict if a video will actually be greenlit or not. Quality control consists of 10 to 15 tasks per month that are graded against what YouTube thinks is the correct answer. This still allows an enormous amount of subjectivity and inconsistency because a typical rater does between 50 and 300 a day. So it's interesting. It's to me, it's nothing particularly shocking. I don't want to show anything or anything like that because, YouTube, please don't squash me. Well, basically what we have confirmation now of some of the things that they're looking at and some of the actions that are happening. To me, I'm not particularly surprised that you have giant centers of people that get a minute or two to look at your video to decide whether or not it qualifies. You're going to have a lot of mistakes in that because ultimately you might have an hour-long video, and if they pick the wrong out-of-context 10-second clip, you lose. And I don't know if there's a better system than that. But what I do know is since these guidelines exist, why wouldn't YouTube just tell us exactly what we have to do and exactly how to appease these demands? This is always the balance of power, the frustration for me as a content creator. You're asking somebody that doesn't understand the context of a particular situation to take less than 5 minutes on a video that may be an hour or 2 hours long and make it a determination if somebody's allowed to make money on it. This is not a great system. Having the algorithm work more appropriately is probably the only reasonable solution for this long term, but now we have some confirmation of how the system works and how we as content creators can better tailor our content to increase the odds that we don't get sucked in by all this. I hope it was informative. I shared what I thought I could without crossing any lines. And I hope this helps arm other creators to make smarter decisions with the content that they make, the thumbnails. We know they're looking at thumbnails now. They're looking at, the characters, your avatars, which is probably why we saw the HoloLive or VTubers get mixed up in things. Boy, the battle continues, I suppose. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.